Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. In each episode, I will engage with leaders who are sharing authentic stories that support impactful influence. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. You will gain insights from leaders who face the same challenges you may encounter and discover strategies to navigate them with resilience and purpose. Meet Elizabeth Hoffman, a dynamic leader in public sector human resources and government finance. With over 15 years of experience, Elizabeth's mission is all about creating environments where teams thrive and individuals feel valued. Currently pursuing her PhD in global leadership, Elizabeth holds pivotal roles like the Director of Human Resources for the City of Fort Wayne and continues to empower her community as Director of Workforce Readiness for the Northeast Indiana HR Association. Recognized as a 2025 40 Under 40 honoree, she's a catalyst for effective teamwork and innovation. Tune in as Elizabeth shares her powerful journey in shaping work cultures where people are the heart of success. If you're seeking healthy leadership engagement in an open, empowering, and authentic environment, then you're in the right place. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome to a fresh episode of Cultivate. We have today a transformative innovator who thrives in people engagement, Elizabeth Hoffman, Director, Human Resources with the City of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Elizabeth, we are thrilled to have you join us in the Cultivate experience today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was excited for the invite.
Look, we have had so much fun. And again, that's the key here, guys. We're going to learn, but there is fun and excitement in the things that we're learning, even in the stretch. We've jumped in with so much, even in our green room time. So I've had that benefit, but the audience hasn't. And we're going to move fast. Anything worth doing, and it's fun, flies by. We know it. So we're going to jump right in and give the audience a little bit of a sneak peek into your why and how that's played out in your leadership. Yes, currently where you are, but like building out your leadership style.
Yeah. So I currently, as you said, I'm the HR director for the City of Fort Wayne. As an overall organization, our mission is to provide the best governmental services for a reasonable price and keep our citizens and our employees safe. As for my personal why, I have been working in the public sector for about 10 years now, in human resources for 15. I really thrive on creating environments where people feel empowered, not just in their roles, but as whole individuals. Making sure that our employees all get home safe at the end of the day is a very big sticking point for me. I like to see everybody have their sense of purpose, and that they feel heard and valued, and that they're equipped to serve our community. A big thing that motivates me is the big picture strategy, like workforce development, leadership pipelines. Working for the city, we have 2,100 employees. We have about 500 job descriptions. So we have a lot of different types of people, a lot of different expertise that are here, and just allowing them to do what they love to do and give back to our community every day is just really important to me.
Okay, so let's just say it, Elizabeth, no small task. Nothing that you mentioned was that this is going to happen overnight. But I love that you and your team are tackling it. You're addressing it. And that investment and empowerment piece, well, we're going to dig into that. But I feel like what you're doing, yes, in your current role, but that's what's coming through as your purpose and how you are pouring that into others. I think that's what's going to make everyone most excited about our conversation today. You know, you mentioned the tenure, like your time in public sector work and in human resources. That's a lot of different responsibilities and key roles that you've been in. What do you attest as a pivotal moment in your career that led you to actually move into this space of HR and workforce development?
You know, you actually asked me this question earlier, and I I cannot think of like a actual pivotal moment that was like, I'm going to go do this. I started out in healthcare and I wanted to become a health facilities administrator. I was working very closely with somebody that I admired as a leader, and she sat me down one day and was like, listen, you have to pick a path. Do you want to go HR or do you want to become a health facilities administrator? And we made a pros and cons list. We did all the things to try to plan out my career. I think I was like 22 at the time, so I did this a lot younger than most people do.
Yeah.
And she was a really big inspiration to me. She was also very young when she stepped into her leadership role. And we just realized that I would rather have an impact helping lead the employee side of it and making sure that they were getting the tools and resources they need. And from there, I happened to apply for a job with the county. It was working at a youth center that houses like runaways, kids that are in the foster system in between homes. And just the people there were so committed to the mission that I realized I don't think that I would be able to go back to the private sector. Having that mission driven employment and just it was such a hard job that they were doing. So any little thing that I could give them to make them feel valued or again keep them safe, give them the tools and resources to become better and move up or move out wherever they wanted to go, like that was what I was going to do. Yeah,
I
that
love
was
it.
pretty much
I
it.
love it. Well, and she says, people, pretty much it. Like, right? No, I love it. Let's go back to where you started. And you're right. I have asked you this question, and I wanted the audience to be able to hear your response, that it wasn't this planned, here's what I'm going to do. And look at the work that you are doing now for something that wasn't the master plan, right? So it doesn't have to be that where we are is this master plan mapped out with all of the dots connected and the points, but you've always been in your why. Like that's traveled with you, even at 22 to where you are now. And we'll hear more about that. The other piece that I want to highlight is that mentorship component, right? Someone who is willing to sit down and do that pros and cons list. We need that, and we need to be that for others. So I beat that drum all the time. We should be pouring in, and someone should be pouring into us, right? So it's important to say yes to that mentorship space, being willing to do that for others as well. So I appreciate you feeding my excitement and passion over how important those things are. You emphasize, and you've done it from the beginning, the people-centered leadership and how passionate you are about pouring into others, making sure they're safe, making sure there's that space of seen and heard, that they're valued. That's heavy. That's a heavy lift. People business, very, very, no two are the same. How do you balance the needs of the organization that you serve and are leading with the needs of those individual team members, especially in a government setting where we know resources, and that's not just finances, but time, which is what we all are, so constrained?
Well, one, I am really big into leadership training and the like leadership or personalities things. So I
Mm,
did Clifton Strengths a while ago as part of a leadership program I was in. And my number two greatest strength is relator, which is seeing people at the individual level. And so I think just having that mindset of each person's going to have individual needs that they need met, but what it comes down to is everybody wants to know what's expected of them and they
mm,
want fairness. And so if you define expectations up front and then hold everybody to the same standards, that makes people feel like their input is valued and that everyone is on the same playing field. So then when you do provide something or some kind of additional support to someone, or someone takes advantage of a benefit that's maybe somebody else doesn't really need, you don't create that animosity between the teams. And working in an organization this size, it's a lot about relying on managers to
mm.
understand their teams and to build that trust with their managers and make sure that that relationship between the employee and their manager is healthy. And then moving on from there, because I don't have access to all 2,100 employees on a daily basis, but the 200, I think there's 203 supervisors that we work with. being able to reach out to them and say, hey, how's your team doing? Do you guys need anything? How can I help? And just being a point where they can come to me without feeling like they're going to be disciplined or any kind of retribution for discussing issues that they have in their team. To be that third party outside source to mediate those problems is really important.
I love that you point out the fact that there are 2,100 employees. You are not individually sitting down with each of them, but you are taking those 2,100 into consideration in the way that you walk out your leadership and speaking into those managers, empowering them. I hear freedom in that. And I love to talk about the space of where we can be that liberating leader. That's really where we're going, right? When we say empowering others, it's because we are going to provide that high support space, but there's also that high challenge space, like calling them up into and keeping that accountability to what we say that we're going to do. And, doing that with 2,100, even doing that with 200, but that's something that's built over time so that they're holding on to more of that. And you're there as a true resource, you and your team. How many are on your team, by the way?
I have 8 people that report directly to me.
Okay. So we can do the math, people. That's still a significant amount of folks who have to be seen and heard and have an open door. That, let's always remember, HR has an open door policy, but sometimes they have to close those doors to get the work done. Doesn't mean they don't want to talk to you. Those come with some significant challenges, right? Being able to manage all of that, the what has to get done, the things that we know that are scheduled, and those things that just come up. So how, like, those challenging spaces, when they come to you, what are you doing with your team to implement healthy ways to say maybe not right now, or to prioritize the things that are coming your way? What does that look like for you and your team?
So my team is divided into different specialties. I always like to say that HR is kind of its own little business because we have our benefits people who are handling a lot of finances, and they're in the employees' information. They're talking to everybody. Everybody knows who benefits people are. So I have a manager and then a person that reports to her. I have a talent and development manager who is just a phenomenal leadership coach. She's wonderful.
Mm,
And then I have 3 HR coordinators and a recruiter. So the people that really come across this problem are my coordinators.
yeah.
And a lot of times they have to just direct people to me for those little niche problems or challenges that are coming up, especially if they're kind of systematic.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a labor and relations manager who works in our law department that I work very closely with. So we kind of try to tag team all of these issues. So we have labor relations does if they need to do an investigation or some kind of employee discipline. And then we do 360 interviews during those. So it's the person, the manager, people related to it, the person making the claim, all that jazz. Our
Mm-hmm.
training and development manager will take the helm if it's something that we feel can be coached or is a training problem. She has resources to set them up with like digital training, or she can bring in leadership coaches. We've done mediation between whole teams before. And then all of the systematic things or creating processes and procedures and focusing on strategy, that falls more into my office. And then my coordinator, so that opens them up to be able to handle the day-to-day operations of an HR generalist, or my senior HR coordinator handles a lot of our job descriptions, making sure that they are okay and that they're meeting the right criteria for their salaries, so we don't have any of that job bloat going on. And she works very closely with me to keep those in line. So there's
It's
definitely
a
a strategy behind it, but it's divide and conquer. And for those one-off challenges, that's basically why I'm here.
Well, and I love that. I love that you say right up front, like, we have strategy within human resources. Like, I think at some point we should go to the end of that statement, but and not every organization has the the ability to have as many as you do on your team, but the strategy behind whether the numbers are there, whether we're talking about 8 or we're talking about 2, there still has to be, we're going to walk through this and engage in a place of, it's a strategic engagement with the employees on how we address. So I love that you brought that up and walked through what that looks like, because I think we can get just so caught in the whirlwind and say, well, we've just got to do it all. Well, how do we address that? So I really appreciate, you yourself are an emerging leader and in a space of, you've been doing this for, yes, a number of years, and you're young in the space, right? And so you are, I'm sure, someone that many are looking to in like, wow, I want to do that. How do I do that? And so you are you're the director of workforce readiness for the Northeast Indiana HR Association. I'm correct on that?
Yes.
Right. So that's a lot of future generation speaking into those emerging leaders, getting them ready for the workforce. What do you see in that space as the most like critical skill for young leaders who need to thrive in today's work environment?
Probably their soft skills, working on
Mhm.
being a good employee, not just good at the operational task, but
A
making
good
sure
human.
they're coming to work, following through on what they say they're going to do, understanding the inherent contract between the employer and the employee.
Mm.
There's a big knowledge base right now going on of there's 5 generations in the workforce, which is the most that there's ever been. And there's a huge shift between the baby boomers and Gen Z. And so they all want different things.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny because we have some Gen Zs that work for the city, quite a few interns that are obviously Gen Z. And I've had older employees come to me and be like, they have some good ideas about things like this work-life balance. Like, heck yeah, let's do it.
I love that.
I'm
We
like,
don't hear
yeah.
those stories enough that like, no, that's good.
Yeah. So it's nice because they view work differently, but they
Mm-hmm.
also see the value in each other's opinions most of the time. Obviously there's some conflict there with just the amount of work that people are willing to put in, and it's okay to have boundaries and people should have
Mm-hmm.
boundaries when it comes to work, but that can cause some tension from our employees that have been here forever and are like, no, we have to get everything done and I have to be here till midnight. It's like, you do not have to be here till midnight. Like, let's put an end to that. That is one thing that I brought to my team that they think is
Mm-hmm.
hilarious. I kick them all out. Usually about 5:30, I'm walking around the office. If anyone's here, you're like, get out. And they all crack up at me and they're like, we're not leaving. I'm like, you are. Sorry, you're leaving.
Time to go. Time to go. Well, it goes back to what you said, seen and heard, right? Those 5 generations, there are differences certainly in the way they communicate. I mean, I've been in that space. Like, that's not what I said. That's what you heard, right? So the way that we speak things out generation to generation, but the commonality is they each want to be seen and heard. And I think that that's what I'm hearing from you, is that you and your team are empowering, managers and leaders to be able to do that very thing for this varied array of employees that hear things differently and have been, like, it's been ingrained, this is what work looks like. So I appreciate what you're saying, and again, let's celebrate, because we don't hear it enough, when one generation so far from the other says, hey, that's a good idea. And good for you for kicking people out of the office. You're not saying we're not going to get the work done. You're saying we're going to do this best, right? And so let's be smart about it. One of the places, and let's not miss this, 2025 40 under 40 honoree. That's a designation that you hold. So it's clear that your leadership style is making an impact in your sphere of influence. And you mentioned someone who actually mentored or kind of inspired you along the way. How important is that you're doing that you're passing that on and moving that forward in an inspirational way?
I think it's really important for people to embrace the mentorship
Mm.
mentality. I honestly have not had anybody reach out to me specifically. Now that I just said that, I'm probably going to get
It's
phone calls.
coming.
But, Nobody's ever reached out to me specifically. I've done a little bit of it with, I used to work someplace where I had administrative assistants that reported to me.
Mm-hmm.
And before they would graduate, I would sit them down and be like, okay, we are applying for these schools and this is why, and we're doing this FAFSA. Because when I was going to college, I didn't have anybody to do that. And I didn't apply for my local schools because my guidance counselor told me I would get more funds elsewhere.
Mm.
That didn't happen. And I
Mm-hmm.
ended up staying here and paying full price for school I could have gone to for free. So I made it my mission that nobody that reports to me will ever do that. They will never have that happen to them. Um, and so I used to do that quite frequently. Through NYRA, I've had some people reach out to sit down and talk. But for the most part, I think maybe it's just because the one of my position and how young I am that people haven't made that connection that they can reach out. I'm happy to talk to people.
Well, like you just said, you've now opened the door. And again, you do a really good job of being able to, we're going to talk about this, or we've touched on it, that whole work-life balance. So sometimes it's saying the hard no's, or really we're saying maybe not right now, but opening that door to say, hey, I am here. We can have a conversation. I want to be able to share what most of us do. We've led from a place of what was once our pain, or that thing that, oh, I don't want anyone to ever feel this. So good for you for being able to speak that out and to say, hey, I am here. Now, it's for those on the other end, because to take you up on that, for someone to say, hey, I know she's busy. And it may mean that I can't have that conversation today, but she is open to it. So I love that you're opening that door. Um, I do want to get a little deeper into that work-life balance. We mentioned, a baby boomer saying, "Hey, that's a concept we might want to dig further into." You have to live that out every day, right? You have a busy career. We're talking about all this work in the public sector, your own family, pursuing PhD. You value professional growth. There is no doubt. But also, I hear, and in our engagement, your personal well-being is obviously very important. So, personally, what strategies do you utilize to maintain that balance, and so that you don't lose your alignment and that you continue to lead with clarity and purpose?
Yeah. One thing that I talked about in my 40 under 40 interview is Nora Roberts has this theory. I'm not sure if she's actually the person that came up with it, but it was her quote that I saw it when I saw it. It's called the glass balls versus plastic balls. There's
Yes.
things in your life that are glass balls, like my family, my faith, my health. And then there are things that are plastic balls. And if you drop a plastic ball, it's going to bounce. But if you drop a glass ball, it's never going to be the same again. And so I really focus on making decisions based on what I can carry at the time. I'm a good example, like you just mentioned, I'm working on my dissertation to finish my PhD. I'm going on year 3 of being in this, or maybe year 4 of being in this
It's
program.
getting fuzzy.
It is. Um, they And so when I started that program, I knew that I was going to have to cut back on some things. So a lot of my community involvement I did cut back on, because I knew that there were other people in those organizations that could champion it for me while I was out.
Mm.
Um, Taking on this role, I made a very big career shift during my PhD. And so that was something that's not advisable. But I have made it a point to just take care of my own health. I'm a huge
Hmm.
proponent of therapy. I have a therapist, and then I also had an executive coach for a while.
Hmm.
If you have the opportunity to have a leadership coach or an executive coach, I highly recommend that people go talk to them. They're a confidential source where you can, especially in HR, we don't have a lot of sources that we can talk to about what's going on because everything's confidential.
Yes.
And so when something happens that just completely blows your mind, you don't want to take it home to your family. So having that outlet is definitely helpful to work through things. And then I keep a pretty strict schedule on when I'm going to be in the office and when I'm not going to be in the office. I am kind of notorious for reading emails really late at night, but
You're
I
in good
usually
company.
try not to respond, because if I start responding, my staff will start responding, and I'm like,
Yes.
no, 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 we're not doing this. So I do really try to lead by example and just focus on the things that are important to me, like my daughter, my husband, making sure our dog gets walked every day, like those kind of things.
I love it. I love it. And I do. I live by that glass. You say plastic, and I think it's been told so many different ways. I call it a rubber ball. Like it is. It will bounce. But I love how you phrase the glass ball. We know glass is going to shatter, but you're like, it'll never be the same again. Because I think we go, well, it can be repaired. And yes, but it's not the same, right? We're going to put those pieces back together, but it won't be the same. And so being able to really step back and take that assessment of what falls into each of those categories, I appreciate, and you said it, like you set the tone. If you respond to emails at 9, 10 at night, they're going to respond back to you, and you're saying it's okay. If you go out for out of office time and vacation, but you don't put that out of office message on, and you're still, then you're saying it's okay to take a break, kinda, right? And so your team, your staff, the employees, they're all seeing that and saying, well, this is what she says, but what does she do? And I think that that's one of those spaces that I love that you were just so authentic and transparent in calling that up and saying, it's our responsibility. And, yes, having someone that you can speak that out with, that's part of the reason of why I really am enjoying so much conversation in this HR leadership space, because you are leading out so much. Who's resourcing you? Right. And so you just proverbially raised your hand and said, we need someone to be able to have those conversations with. So we're not carrying it all, leaving it within the team, or taking that home with us. So I really appreciate, and I hope, and I know that will resonate with our listeners. In that looking ahead, right? We've talked about a lot of the things that kind of got you here and what you're doing today and those spaces. And then it's not about just today, right? We're leaving this. It's not all about us. What are we leaving for those who are coming next? And you've got time in that space, but there are challenges in people empowerment. How do you, what would you say are one of those things that to be prepared for the challenges that are coming, emerging leaders that are coming up, that you utilize with your current team to keep them grounded, and that you would say, hey, leaders coming up, graduating, this is something that you don't want to take your eye off, pay attention to, and keep as a non-negotiable.
Um, Probably that work-life balance piece.
Mm,
I know that there's a lot of discourse right now about the work from home, not work from home,
yes.
people getting called back in the office. Well, and I work for the public sector, and so transparency is a huge thing for
Mm-hmm.
us. And our mayor did call us back in September and said absolutely no more work from home. And that caused some issues. So I think being able to navigate that, one, that discourse, and two, building culture in a virtual environment. That is one thing that I was very concerned about with all of the work from home. I kind of knew that in the public sector, we weren't really going to be like, everyone work from home, we're
Stay.
getting rid of City Hall. That's not going to happen. But they, when I think about my career moving forward, if I do end up stepping back into the public or private sector,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know how to connect to my employees in a virtual environment. And that is something that I am looking into, trying to figure out how people do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking towards some of the HR experts that I know that do have always worked in a virtual environment. And so just being on a lookout for how that affects HR trends when you're trying to hold people accountable to a handbook, but you're not with them, you're not seeing
Yes.
them, their managers don't know what they're up to. I would definitely encourage, especially HR leaders that are coming into the space, but leadership in general, to try to hone those skills, because I think it's only going to keep growing.
And I love that you're having that forward thinking, because it is only going to keep growing. This question isn't going to go away. And you're right. City Hall's not going to close down, but other organizations, I mean, that's not even a question. They're not coming back in. but the engagement piece is more important than ever. So how do we do that well? Because it's not just about turn your camera on. I think that's, when everything happened, that's where we started. Well, if we could just get them to turn the cameras on, it goes well beyond that. Because sometimes, again, we can be in that space where the camera's on, but are we actually engaging? And that's what I'm hearing from you. So I appreciate that. Before we wrap up, I know there is something that is, on your heart and in your space that you want the audience to be able to hear and to share as far as something you've learned, and that you want to leave with. So go ahead and share that.
Yeah. One of the questions that you asked me about was a leadership trend moving forward. This isn't really a leadership trend, it's more of an HR trend, but something that's really been on my heart and on my mind recently is getting people back to work. It's actually a Society for Human Resource Management initiative right now. And I've been through the training, and it's something that I never really thought about before. We have 2 million people that are incarcerated in the United States. We have a huge workforce shortage, and everybody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got thousands of people entering the workforce again that aren't given a fair shot because of their history. And I mean, we always use you do the crime, you got to do the time, but then we're holding these people accountable for the rest of their lives, and it's increasing recidivism rates. And I think that as employers, we really need to start reconsidering how we're viewing those and kind of shift our perspective to give people another chance. So sometimes people just make a bad decision, and that doesn't mean that every decision they make for the rest of their lives is going to be bad. And so that's something that we're focused on at the city is how can we reevaluate how we're doing this. And I just really wanted to encourage HR leaders to really think about it. We went through the ban the box phase a while ago, and I felt like a lot of that was lip service because we're still running background checks at the end of it. And so I'm really hoping that as we move forward and try to create new workforce initiatives along with like talent pipelines for incoming students, that we consider the people that we've kind of isolated from the workforce.
Well, I mean, Elizabeth, you didn't hold back, and I love that. I mean, this is a conversation that should be happening. I think that's first and foremost. Let's not think that we've addressed it fully, like you said, with some of the initiatives that have been out there or the conversations here and there that we've had. You're like, this needs to be elevated and something for all of us to look at. And again, I'm not hearing you say a broad stroke, but when you say we made errors in we all have, right? Part of what we're talking about and what you're mentioning is grace. What does that look like, and how do we walk that out? Being able to have conversation with those who have been in that place and have made a mistake, and as we've said, done the time. What does that look like now when we bring them back into the society with us? Are we continuing just to keep barriers up? I mean, that's a big conversation in HR is like, how do you, when we're talking about employees, reduce the barriers? And in this case, you're talking a very big one for someone to even get back into the workforce. So I appreciate that is on your heart and space, that you're bringing that into your team and having that conversation on a very high level, but that you wanted to also bring that conversation to your peers. So I'm sure that we'll get great feedback along. And that's what it is. Let's have the conversation and bring these things to the table. You've given us so much to think about today, and it has been really inspiring. We've had a great time. I told you guys, no disappointment in that. Before we, wrap things up today, I always love to give the audience and you an opportunity to share a little bit about you that we didn't get to touch on. And so let's talk about the important things. Favorite ice cream flavor?
I think I'm going to have to go mint chocolate chip.
I'm hearing that. I got to start writing this down and running some polls and percentages. That one keeps coming up. My sister loves that. It's not my favorite, but okay. All right. Well, I think
it might be because it's so readily available. Like I love lemon ice cream. Like if I had to pick between the two, I would probably pick lemon. So maybe lemon's my favorite, but
okay.
It's so much easier to find mint chocolate chip, and it's pretty easy to do. Like across the board, it's good. Like pizza.
Well, I always think of Andy's candy. As soon as I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's what that is. Well, you're right in the fact of it, the ones that are readily available. The one I heard that I have never really seen is peach. And this gentleman Peach, peach, peach. I'm like, where do you even find that?
Was
And
he
he
from
makes it half
Georgia?
the time. Yeah, and he's not. That's what I thought. Nope, nope, nope. But those are the things that make us unique. What? So, book, podcast, or a leader who you will say has really profoundly impacted the way that you walk your leadership out.
Kim Scott.
Didn't even have to think.
I love her. So I highly recommend anybody and everybody read Radical Candor. It is my favorite book. Yeah, it's such a good book. And then I think the next one's Radical Kindness, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend that book so often that I'm honestly at this point like it should probably be getting royalties. I've bought so many of them.
Well, maybe you get enough people who's heard it today, and that'll do it. That'll push it over the top. What are 3 words that you hope people will use to describe your impact a decade from now?
Integrity is a big one for me. Kindness. And probably intelligence. I get that one a lot, but
Love it. Love it. Well, I think that those things balance out, but also speak to what we've heard today from you. So if that's what others are picking up and you're starting to hear that already, I think that means that you're doing a good job of walking out your purpose. And then I love this one. What's one workplace buzzword that you'd be thrilled if you never had to hear again?
circle back. Or take this offline. When people say that in real meetings, I'm like, we are not online, guys.
What's happening right now? let's just handle this. Or it's just a new meeting.
Yeah.
I gotcha. I love it. I love it. Well, Elizabeth, again, bold and inspiring conversation today. I love the things that you've brought to the table for us to dig into, and that you've been so authentic and vulnerable to share the spaces that you're in. You know, you've provided us a glimpse, yes, into your relational leadership journey, your passion and insights, and you've inspired us to dig into ours. And it's just a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Fantastic. Well, Cultivate collaborators, that's a wrap today. But remember, each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep making an impact, stirring things up, and being better together. Thanks, everyone. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, asking for a friend, or interested in being a guest on the show, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com. Remember, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together.